Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. Back today to talk about my anticipated releases for March 2025. There are actually so many books coming out in March that I actually had to cut this little list in half. I can tell you there are books coming out by Jessie Burton, Natasha Pulley, Emma Donoghue has a book coming out in March. I'm really excited to see that Sophie Haydock's Madame Matisse is finally coming out in March. This is one that I had talked about in an anticipated releases video, I think in summer 2024, but then its publication date ended up getting pushed back and it is now finally coming out. But yeah, so many books that are coming out that I could have put onto this list, but really I wanted this to be a list of the things that I am the most excited about, that are really lighting a fire under me. So without much further ado, let's get straight on into these anticipated releases. Coming out on the 13th of March is The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore. This is the fourth book in the Dream Harbour series, which started with the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. This is a romance book series, which is all about, you know, the quaint small town. I know it's really big on TikTok, and as a result, it's kind of hit and miss. Some people love this, some people just think it is so saccharine sweet. And I still haven't quite worked out what my feelings are on them. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this series. They aren't my favourite romance books ever. I can't really remember much of any of them, and yet I have read all of them so far, and I intend to read this one. I don't know what that says about me. I suppose I just have a major sweet tooth and a love of romance, and so here we go. Here is a nice little palate cleanser romance book for me. This time involving a single dad called Archer. Never in my life met a man called Archer, and yet in romance books seems like a very common name. Who is a world-renowned chef who ends up making his way to Dream Harbour on account of wanting to raise his young daughter in a very community-focused place, who ends up falling in love with the woman that he hires to be his daughter's nanny. The blurb for this one says that it has tropes of single dad, forced proximity, slow burn, and found family. All the things that we romance readers love, alongside this very in-your-face community who can't help but get involved. I just know this is going to be one of those romance books that I just instantly gobble up. I'm not even really a big fan of a small town romance, and yet somehow this series does have its claws in me. Also coming out on the 13th of March is The House of Barbary by Isabelle Schuler. This is the author of Lady Macbethad, which I read a couple of years ago and really enjoyed, and this is her retelling of Bluebeard, with a main character called Beatrice Barbary, who ends up on a bit of a revenge quest after her father is brutally murdered. There aren't really that many plot details in the blurb for this one, but I am imagining if it's anything like Lady Macbethad, we'll have a very ambitious, pretty ruthless protagonist who kind of skirts that line between good and evil, especially when she's working for revenge and retribution. Yeah, unlike Lady Macbethad, I really have no idea what this is going to be focusing on, and I'm just excited to go along for the ride. The last book that I have to speak about coming out on the 13th of March is non-fiction. It is Bookish: How Reading Shapes Our Lives by Lucy Mangan. Lucy Mangan is probably most known for writing Bookworm, which was her memoir of childhood reading. Now, this was a book that I found to be a little bit of a miss for me, and I think part of it was because I just didn't know a lot of the books that she was talking about. Sometimes with these books about books, the books about the joy of reading can be hit or miss depending on how much the author tends to lean on particular books and their discussions of them. You know, if you've read that book, then great, and if you haven't, it's kind of like you've been left behind in the dust, like you're not part of the secret club. And yet I am still very much intrigued by this one. This is looking more at her adult life and the role that books have played in it. I'm imagining it's going to be very similar to Dear Reader by Catherine Rensenbrink. I'm really hoping for something like that. The blurb says it chronicles her years of buying, borrowing, hoarding, everything from well-worn literary classics to steamy bunkbusters, gripping thrillers, young adult novels, and other not-so-guilty pleasures. Coming out on the 18th of March is a book that I'm sure there are many people very much anticipating, and it is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. The second of Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games prequels, this time focusing on the Hunger Games of Haymitch Abernathy. This is a book that so many of us Hunger Games fans have been looking forward to for such a long time and have been really anticipating. And I can't believe we are in touching distance of this book. For those of you who have only watched the films, or it's been a long time since you've read the books, Haymitch, who is Katniss and Peter's mentor in their Hunger Games, was a previous winner of the Hunger Games, which was the 50th. Every 25 years in the Hunger Games, they have what is called a quarter quell, where they are doing their Hunger Games, but they have a little bit of a difference to really shake things up. We know from Catching Fire that the twist in the third quarter quell was that the tributes were going to be reaped from the existing pool of victors. For Haymitch taking part in the 50th Hunger Games, the twist was that there were going to be double the amount of tributes to normal. So instead of 24 tributes competing against each other, it was 48. 2 girls and 2 boys from each district. And while we know bits and pieces about Haymitch's games, and obviously we know what the ending is going to be, I'm I'm still really intrigued to learn more about this character and to see the more hopeful, optimistic side of him, because obviously by the time that we meet him in the Hunger Games series, he is understandably cynical and bitter, mostly as a defense mechanism because he's had to live as a mentor to dozens of tributes who've ended up dying. I feel like I'm one of the rare people who actually did enjoy the reading experience of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes when it first came out. You know, I didn't think it was as good as the original series, but I still had a good time. So yeah, if there is any book that I am most anticipating, it's probably this one. Coming out on the 20th of March, a non-fiction history that I am so excited about. Only recently discovered that it was coming out is Lionessheart, The Life and Times of Joanna Plantagenet by Catherine Hanley. If you recognise the name Catherine Hanley, it's probably because she is the author of one of my favourite history books, my favourite biographies of all time, which was Matilda, Empress, Queen, Warrior. She's also the author of Two Households, Two Kingdoms, as well as 1217, The Battle That Saved England. Basically, anywhere that Catherine Hanley goes, I will follow. And with this book, I'm so excited because it's another biography. Now, I really enjoyed Two Houses, Two Kingdoms, but I love the focus of Matilda, Empress, Queen, Warrior, looking at one person's life in depth, rather than having to spread the focus across 200 years. And in this, we are looking at the life of Joanna Plantagenet, who is a less known royal figure, the sister of Richard I, and of course, a daughter of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. A woman who had obviously such influential and very, very well-known family members, but herself was fairly overlooked. The blurb says, Richard the Lionheart travelled to far-flung realms, went on crusade, met kings and popes, and exerted a great deal of influence on the world around him, and so did his sister. The sons of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine have been the subject of much historical attention, but their daughters have been curiously overlooked. The youngest of them, Joanna, led a particularly extraordinary life, full of adventure and danger, and not a little controversy. That was more than a match for any of her brothers, including the famed Lionheart himself. Another fantastic woman from the past that I am looking forward to reading about, or I should say reading about more than I already have done. Coming out on the 20th of March, we have Living with Jane Austen by Janet Todd. We know that I'm a massive Jane Austen fan, and it might be that I end up leaving this book for Jane Austen July, but it is coming out in March. Being published to coincide with the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birth, this book is really looking at our relationship to Jane Austen, why she has been such an enduring presence on the literary landscape. The blurb says, part personal memoir, part expert interaction with all the letters, manuscripts and published novels, Janet Todd's book reveals what living with Jane Austen has meant to her and what it might also mean to others. Another prequel that I am looking forward to and rather intrigued by is Elphie by Gregory Maguire, coming out on the 25th of March. This I am very much intrigued by. It is written by Gregory Maguire, the author of Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, and is focused on Elphaba's childhood, particularly before her powers really took root. Now, you know me, I am a massive Wicked fan, and I recently reread Wicked ahead of going to see the movie, and so it is that I am rather intrigued by what this book has to offer, because I would argue that Wicked, the original book, did include a fair amount of detail about Elphaba's childhood, so why do we need this one? There is a little cynical part of my brain that is thinking, why is Gregory Maguire going back to the Wicked series all these years later when he hasn't really touched it for so long? And I do have a suspicion that the fact that a lot of eyes are on the Wicked movies has been a little bit of incentive, shall we say. But I am intrigued. I want to see if this is going to offer any more insight into this character and her family, but I am also a little bit skeptical of how much it's going to offer compared to the original book. And then the last book that is coming out in March that I am excited about is Story of a Murder by Hallie Rubenhold, coming out on the 27th of March. A lot of you will know Hallie Rubenhold's name as she was the author of The Five, which sought to give more in-depth biographies and insight into the lives of the 5 women who were murdered by Jack the Ripper. And with this book, Hallie Rubenhold is looking at murder victims once again, for whom historically more has been said on the murderer than the victim, though one that I am much less familiar with, looking at the Crippen murders. On the 1st of February 1910, vivacious musical performer Belle Elmore suddenly vanished from her North London home, causing alarm among her circle of female friends, the entertainers of the Music Hall Ladies Guild, who demanded an immediate investigation. They could not have known what they would provoke: the unearthing of a gruesome secret, followed by a fevered manhunt for the prime suspect, Belle's husband, medical fraudster Dr. Hawley Harvey Crippen. Hiding in the shadows of this evergreen tale is Crippen's typist and lover, Ethel de Neve. Was she really just an innocent girl, enthralled to a powerful older man, as so many people have since reported? In this epic examination of one of the most infamous murders of the 20th century, prize-winning social historian Hallie Rubenhold gives voice to those who have never properly been heard. As I say, I know nothing about this case, but I trust Hallie Rubenhold, and I'm very much looking forward to learning more. So there we go, those are the books that are coming out in March that I am very much looking forward to. As I say, I could have made this video double the length, and I'm sure there are going to be many other books coming out in March that I haven't even thought about. So So please do let me know down below if anything you are particularly excited for, anything that I've missed. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.